Hey guys, welcome back to Uncensored Nerd. This is Zach 2K as always. We're here to bring you a little bit of a different video today. We're going to actually be talking about why there's so much division in fandom. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me, but ever since the release of the Snyder Cut, all I've been seeing is hate from one side or hate from the other side. And I just never really understood that. But that's always been present in nerd culture. Even if you were going all the way back to the 70s, if you were a Star Trek fan, you had to hate Star Wars. Even now, if you're a PlayStation fan, you have to hate Xbox. DC, you have to hate Marvel, and vice versa. I just don't really get it. If you're a Disney fan, you can't go to Universal. Why? That doesn't make a lot of sense. This type of nerd division just is not doing anything productive to the industry or to the fans. And really, we're the ones suffering for it. This whole nerd division has been nothing but detrimental to the fans. All that we're doing is hurting our own products. We're hurting the movies that are coming out. We're forcing them to change the way they're going mid-production, and it's making it not good. That's how we ended up in this situation in the first place. The critical and commercial failure of the original Batman vs Superman, which in all honesty wasn't that bad. I see there's a lot of flaws in it, don't get me wrong. But when you watch the Ultimate Edition, that does pick up a lot of that stuff. So I know a lot of people that really think if you have to like Marvel, you hate DC. And that kind of makes me sad, especially as someone who's been reading comics for a very long time. I would get my Batman subscriptions the same week I would get my Spider-Man subscriptions. The same week I would get my Superman subscriptions, my Detective Comics, my Action Comics, my Avengers, my New Avengers, all of that stuff. I never felt like I had to get one or the other. And I don't know why film fans feel like that's how it goes. It's just not really it. Now, if we look at films, that's kind of the big difference with Marvel and DC. I know I just got off my high horse about not dividing and being united, but for the sake of argument for this video, I am going to touch a little bit Marvel versus DC, specifically the Marvel Cinematic Universe versus the DC Universe. What we're going to really go over is just the differences between the two and what I thought about the Snyder Cut, what I thought the reactions really should have been about the Snyder Cut. But starting off, we're going to go into what makes those two universes different. With Marvel makes exceptional movies. Phenomenal fanfare where you can go, popcorn loving, sitting in the theater. I mean, not anymore since COVID, but you know what I mean. You just go in, you have a good time. And there's nothing wrong with that. Marvel is great. Marvel is a fun time where I'm gonna smile the whole movie. And I do. DC doesn't make movies, they make films. And I get that sounds pompous. Trust me, I get that. But that's really what it is. It's a masterclass of technical filmmaking. Each shot that Zack Snyder's put in the whole Snyderverse is like it's ripped from a comic book. It looks beautiful. Look at the Batman on the gargoyles. You have the shots that look like they're ripped right out of the Frank Miller comic, Dark Knight Returns. I mean, Batfleck's outfit looks just like that costume. There's so many homages to the comics, it's ridiculous, because Snyder is a fan. And that's what we fans backed him for. We loved seeing those images. Now, Marvel does that too. You have you have Captain America with Thor's hammer, which was incredible. You have Ant-Man riding Hawkeye's arrow. Perfect, ripped right out of the pages of the comic. But DC just tends to focus more on making the comic readers happy. They don't like to hold your hand through the plot. You have to kind of unnerve it. They're not going to tell you what a mother box is. They're not going to tell you what a boom tube is or the anti-life equation, because they expect you to be a fan of the comics and to know that. And if you're not, they're not going to wait for you to catch up. And that's okay. It's okay to not be okay with that. But it's also fun to do your own research and figure things out like that, instead of coming up with an opinion that you really have no basis for. I'm not saying you can't have your own opinion. Of course you can. But do some research. Look into it. Like, I've seen a lot of just weird comments that really struck me, like Thanos being the original, when in reality, Darkseid was first. Now, it's not important who was first, but to see that so often and frequently, it's just kind of confusing. Like, you really don't know what you're talking about, and that's okay, but just don't talk about it. If you don't know, don't say anything. Now, as far as this whole MCU versus DC, we love both here at Uncensored Nerd. We really do. I cannot tell you the just sheer energy I got when Avengers Assemble came out of Cap's mouth. That was the moment I've been waiting for 10 years. But that's also kind of why you can't compare Endgame and Infinity War to Zack Snyder's Justice League. We had so much anticipation for that movie because there was 10 years of buildup. DC, they try to do something that, with a much shorter period of time, not many people could have accomplished either. But where they succeeded, and I think a lot of people just don't recognize it, is they weren't trying to be MCU. They were trying to be Lord of the Rings, and no one talks about that. The MCU, they've etched out their niche. They know exactly what they are. They're that fun, that fantasy, that smile on your face entertainment. DC decided to go for the darker tone, and that's okay too, because you know what? Not every comic story is fun. I definitely wouldn't look at Long Halloween and say that's a fun story, because it's really, really, really not. But it doesn't mean it's not enjoyable, and the movies are the exact same way. These movies are a good time. Not necessarily always a fun time, but they're gonna make you think. They make you put some perspective into the old movies. I just think people are kind of missing the point on these. Now, as far as the Snyder Cut goes, there's also a lot of misconceptions about everything that happened with it. Now, there's a lot of people who know a lot more than I do about it. I'm not gonna pretend to be an expert on everything that's going on, but I'll just kind of catch you up on a little bit of what I do know. And it was kind of unfortunate for Zack Snyder. This is from an artist perspective. Now, when you look at this right here, you see artists can support other artists, even MCU artists, because they supported him. The Russo brothers are basically the backbone of what the MCU became. I mean, obviously Kevin Feige is the god, but the Russo brothers are pretty high up there. And even they supported Zack Snyder, because a fellow artist will support a fellow artist. So why can't the fans support this artist? I mean, from the sheer aspect alone of everything that happened to him, his daughter committing suicide, the fact that he had a battle constantly with Warner Brothers because they're the real enemies here. I mean, the fans aside, Warner Brothers are doing everything they can to make sure that we hate DC. And that's also a shame and something that we can address at a later date. But I feel like at this point, that's been talked to death. We all know everything that happened. But in case you still need more reminders, it was just not good. Snyder stepped away, and Joss Whedon came up with this brilliant idea to make basically a carbon copy of the MCU, and that just didn't work. It did not work. Now, this new version, you have characters that matter, you have stakes, you have a villain who actually, in my opinion, is better than most of the MCU villains. I mean, Thanos obviously is better. I would say, besides Thanos, Killmonger might be up there. And then of course you have Loki, but he's kind of like more the anti-villain. So really, there's only two people above Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf was sympathetic, it made you feel for the guy, and he was just kind of a badass. His suit looked incredible too. So through all of this, how do you not look at this movie and go, yeah, that's a significantly better movie? Because I just don't get how people don't see it. With the different tone, how it's consistent, you have the Flash finally having a purpose. Like that third act, with the Flash doing what he did, and I'll try to avoid spoilers here, but I'm sure they'll come out. And at this point, if you haven't seen the Snyder Cut, maybe you should, go see the Snyder Cut, probably. Realistically, that third act in the original 2017 version, the Flash did nothing. Dostoevsky, that was not funny. It wasn't funny, and it just left him like he had nothing to do. In this one, he literally saved everybody. It was because of him they succeeded, basically. I just don't know why they took that out. And I don't know why people aren't really recognizing that. So besides the Flash stuff, you have an incredible score from Junkie XL. You have the Batman arc, which honestly, retroactively makes Batman vs Superman and Man of Steel better. That's another thing this movie did really well, is it just made the other ones better over time. You have Batman now having this conclusion arc of where he was in a dark place. He was this crime fighter, he'd been doing it for so long, it had beaten him down. He wasn't who he started as. And then there was the Superman conflict. He realized the mistakes that he made. He realized how he needed to change to become that Batman again, who he used to be. And now that's bringing him to become the leader of the Justice League, where he's taking on the role of bringing everyone in. And everyone who said Batman is not the leader of the Justice League because he's a human doesn't make sense. Again, in the comics, he's the leader of the Justice League. So you just gotta know your research a little bit. You gotta look back into where all this source material is coming from. I know there's a lot of it and it's intimidating, but you shouldn't talk at your ass. Like, have some knowledge a little bit before you start bringing stuff up. But going back to the movie, besides the Batman stuff, you have the Batman and Alfred stuff, which was super endearing. And honestly, I thought it was my favorite take of Batman and Alfred's relationship. I loved Michael Caine. Michael Caine and Christian Bale were great. But this one, for whatever reason, the way Alfred interacted with Bruce, the way he interacted with the rest of the Justice League, it felt normal. It felt like I was reading it. It just worked. Like with the tea scene with Diana and just how they were playing off each other. Jeremy Irons did a fantastic job, and it was great. It was a great take on how that butler slash partner aspect of it really works with the whole team aspect of it. So besides that, you also have Cyborg, who was cut out from basically the whole 2017 version. At least he was cut out of most of the stuff that mattered. And this one just made him so much more relatable. He was somebody who had a complete arc in this movie. He started in one place and then just ended up in this place of acceptance of, this is who I am. I am Cyborg, and that's okay. But before that, he was fractured. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know what to do or how to control himself. Now he's, as they say in the movie, a digital god. And the fact that they made it to where he's this incredible digital Jesus who could do whatever he wants, he's basically the digital equivalent of Superman. It's incredible. It was just really, really good to see. And honestly, it makes me almost believe all the Ray Fisher stuff. I at first was not really on Team Fisher, but I kind of get it now. Clearly the Josh cut, they had some ulterior motive, something that they didn't want maybe to succeed, or they didn't want a certain character to succeed, a certain plot point to succeed, but the stuff they took out just didn't make sense. I mean, look at the Wonder Woman scene. Yeah, the terror scene was pretty brutal, but again, Wonder Woman is an Amazon, she's a warrior. She's killed in the comics before, it's not like anything new. Not to mention, so is Batman. Not just the Ben Affleck version. Each iteration of Batman is killed on screen, so can we put that one to rest, please? It's okay. The brutality of it is fine, especially with Wonder Woman, because again, she's an Amazon, she's this warrior. She is a brutal badass. That's what she's always been. Now, what I'm talking about specifically is the scene which Diana talks to the little girl. Well, she calls her princess, and then the little girl asks if she could be her when she grows up. And Diana says, you could be whatever you want to be.
Can I be like you someday?
You can be anything you want to be.
That's so heartfelt. That's Wonder Woman right there. That's an inspiration for little girls. And that's what that character was supposed to be. It was beautiful. I don't know why they took that out. It doesn't make any sense. It really shows you who the character is, even if you hadn't seen Wonder Woman or Batman vs Superman. It kind of just recertifies in your head, wow, this person is just a beacon of good in the world. Now, the action set pieces were incredible. The improved tunnel fight with Steppenwolf and the Parademons was great. You also had Darkseid. And honestly, I've been waiting a long time to see Darkseid. For all those Darkseid would lose to Thanos, I'm sorry, but you are 100% wrong. Darkseid is a god. Thanos is not. Darkseid would destroy Thanos. Like, that's fact. And even with or without the gauntlet, it doesn't really matter. Darkseid's gonna win. Look at the source material, look at what he's done in the comics before, the worlds he's destroyed. Now, if we're talking Darkseid Galactus, you might have a case. But Darkseid Thanos really is nothing. Thanos has been arrested by humans. Like, come on. Let's get that thought out of there too. Yeah, the interpretation of Thanos in the MCU was brilliant. Josh Brolin did a fantastic job. Visually, he looked great. The motivation for that character was also incredible. It doesn't mean he'd beat Darkseid. So besides all of that, all of the changes that were made, the pacing fixes, the context, when you take these scenes that you saw in the 2017 version, and then you recontextualize them with the background and this new score, the new ratio even worked, it just changed so much. For you to say that this is the same movie that we got in 2017 means you're just not watching it. And I get everyone's like, oh, well, it's 4 hours long, of course it's gonna be better. Sure. But that movie could have easily been a 2.5-hour cut of the movie. 2 hours, 45 minutes. And it still would have been better than what we got before. Now, if that's too long, because you went to see Dark Knight and you went to see Dark Knight Rises, and that movie was 2.5 and 2:45 respectively. So the length of the movie is really not gonna change anything if the movie's good. If the movie moves, and this movie does. It's 4 hours, but it feels more like 3, which still might be too long for some people, but you knew what you were getting into, and it's even broken up into chapters. You could split it up and just watch the chapters as you go. After all this, I totally get that it's not a perfect movie. There's definitely flaws to it. Snyder has his stylized version that doesn't always work with me, like the singing to Aquaman just didn't really, it went on a little bit too long. And there was a couple of scenes in here where I was like, you probably could have cut 10 seconds off there. You lingered a little bit in this shot. And that's part of the cuts that they could have made to make it a 2:45. You know what I mean? It would have worked a little bit better for me. But still, what we got in this movie was just nothing but good things. I don't know why everyone's trying to bring it down. And it's not everybody. And I know this video really, it's not gonna reach everybody. There's gonna be people who are 100% not gonna change their minds, and they weren't gonna change their minds no matter what I said in this. I'm not really talking to those people, because that's like talking to a brick wall. I'm talking to the people who are on the fence or are just not really being vocal about the fact that they like both. But it's okay to like both. You should like both. Without DC, you don't get Marvel. Superman is the first hero. He is the person who made this whole explosion happen. So you kind of got to appreciate the two. Yeah, it might not be your style. It might not be the type of movie you go to see. But to people like me, it really doesn't mean the movie you like to see is better. Because I love them all. There was a time where I didn't think I'd ever see any of these on screen. Yeah, we got the Batman movie every couple of years. Yeah, we got, the big names. And really until Spider-Man, we didn't have anything. But for whatever reason, people tend to forget that. They tend to forget what a time was before comics were cool. I used to get picked on all the time, reading comic books in school. Like, it's fine. It's fine now. If I had gone to school now, people wouldn't really care. But I never thought in a million years I would see a Justice League movie. Let alone a Justice League movie that mentions boom tubes or Darkseid. Like, it just worked so well. Yeah, maybe they didn't really explain a lot of the stuff for you specifically. But we live in the information era. You could literally look up the majority of the things that you had a question on, and you'd probably find out. And honestly, that might rope you in even more. It might make you want to look up the next thing, and then the next thing. And then maybe it might want to make you go to your comic shop and pick up a book. Now, why is this such a big deal? There's a couple of reasons, but mainly it's because we got to show the big suits in Hollywood who they really work for. And that's the fans. Without us, this movie wouldn't have come out. They didn't want this movie to come out. They didn't really care. The reason Justice League came out so quickly in 2017, instead of them just pushing it back after Zack Snyder's family's tragedy, was so they could just make money, let it out to dry, and hope for the best. They don't care about these properties. They don't care about these characters. But they own the characters. So as the consumer, we can either consume or not consume. But we finally told them, look, our voice matters too. And there's certain things we want to see, and it's just a little bit of care. That's all. And I think we finally showed that to them. Now, we'll see if it has long-running ramifications in the future. It could just be like EA games saying that they're going to change, and they never actually change. Well, we really don't know. But to release the Snyder Cut, that's a pretty big deal. Not to mention, let's restore the Snyderverse. This movie retroactively makes the other ones so much better. It just creates this whole world. And if you don't believe me, rewatch it. Start with Man of Steel, go to the Batman vs Superman Ultimate Edition, and then jump into Justice League. Do it in a week. You don't have to do it every day. But I promise you, if you go into it with an open mind, you might actually come out enjoying them. You're definitely going to see some beautifully shot scenes. And at the very least, you're going to see something that reminds you of a comic book. Now's really a time where we need to come together as a group. We came together for the Snyder Cut, the release of the Snyder Cut. Hopefully we come together for the restore the Snyderverse. And hopefully the fans can just stop attacking each other. We're all on the same side. We all just want to see good movies. You don't have to be so vocal about a movie you don't like. I promise you, it's a lot better to be positive in life and talk about the things that you like as opposed to the things you dislike. Yeah, it might be easier to talk about the things you dislike and trash on them, but what positivity are you bringing into the world if you do that? What fun is that? You might enjoy coming after things like that, and I can't stop you. But just know it's a lot better to put positivity into the world than negativity. So please, just try and rewatch it. As for me, I'm gonna watch it probably 3 or 4 more times the next couple of weeks. I gotta bring that Snyderverse back. I need to see Man of Steel 2. I wanna see what that Cyborg movie would have been. And even if they put it into comic book form, it doesn't matter. But this whole DC versus Marvel just needs to stop. Especially when you factor in the fact, look at everything else DC has. That Harley Quinn show is pretty freaking badass. Those animated movies, Marvel's got nothing on that. The MCU is a marvel, no pun intended. It is a masterpiece. The Russo brothers, Favreau, Kevin Feige, they all created this incredibly deep, rich universe, and I'm bought in. I'm gonna go see anything deep Marvel day one. I'm gonna go see anything DC day one. It doesn't matter. We're all one industry, it's all one genre that we all need to see succeed. So guys, tell me what you all think. I know I had a lot to say today, and it kind of came off as a rant, and I'm sorry about that. We'll get back to our normal selves later. But I just need to get those things off my chest. And guys, if you need to get some stuff off your chest, make sure you write that down below, hit that like, share, subscribe button. And if you want to stay up to date on all that great nerd word, make sure you're opted into notifications. I've been Zach with 2Ks. Have a good one.